It's a juggling act. Parents at home helping kids learn virtually, all while trying to balance their job responsibilities. But what are their rights as employees when it comes to accommodation? I get the answers from employment lawyer Stuart Rudner. Are there specific rights that, let's say, employees have? They need to stay home, be with their kids, and help them with remote learning. Let's say they can't complete this task or they can't jump on these conference calls. So as an employee, they're not ideal right now. Do they have these rights?
One of the messages from Mayor Tory yesterday was that he wanted employers to make the effort to ensure that their employees knew what rights, what supports, what benefits were available to them. And I think that's really important because there is so much confusion out there. And one of the things that we've seen, I mean, our firm works with employers and employees. We see both sides. We're now coming up on about 10 months of this, and there is so much confusion about what rights exist. And it's fascinating because on one hand, people overestimate their rights. On the other hand, people underestimate their rights. Both of those are dangerous. It's really important that people understand. So when we're talking about someone who's at home, their kids at home, which, right now every kid in the province is home this week, and many will be home for many weeks to come. What do you do, as you said, if you can't, let's say, get on that call or do your task? And there's two different legal regimes that we're looking at. The human rights legislation provides for accommodation, but that's accommodation of childcare obligations. And that's a higher test. In pre-pandemic days, if someone, for example, said they needed to be accommodated by having a later start time because the daycare only opened at 8:30, they would have to show there were no other options, no other daycares. They didn't have a partner who could take the child to work. There was no other way around it, and it was an absolute need. That's a high threshold. And that's under the human rights legislation. Then we also have the IDEL, the Infectious Disease Emergency Leave, which was designed specifically really for this pandemic. That's a lot broader and a lot easier to access. So if someone cannot work because of COVID, they're entitled to that leave. But remember, that's not accommodation in the sense of not doing some work or working later. That's a leave of absence. It's job protected, so you have job protection, but it's not income protected. So in other words, you're not being paid, although you could apply for EI. And most jobs can be done with some accommodation as long as everyone understands what people are going to do. And I've had a lot of employers who are frustrated because they have employees who say, well, I can do the job, it's fine. And then they find that the person is disappearing for an hour at a time. Or they say they're not going to be working and yet they're online doing some work. It's got to be really clear what you can do and what you can't do. Make that really clear to your employer, and then employers should, wherever possible, allow for that accommodation. Make sure the work gets done.
For more information, head to rudnerlaw.ca. For City News and Breakfast Television, I'm Melanie Ng.